Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar about elevating your operational systems for compliance and child safety. We are going to get started here in just a minute. While we're waiting on our speakers, feel free to drop where you're coming from in the chat. It's always fun to see where people are tuning in from all across the world. So feel free to drop your name, say hi in the chat, and we'll get started here very soon. We definitely want to hear from you throughout today's session. So please make sure to drop any questions or comments that you have in the chat or in the Q&A. And we'll get started here in just a moment. Hi, Lindsay. Thanks for tuning in. Amazing. Jessica, thanks so much for joining. Feel free while we're waiting as well to drop in any questions you have about compliance or about child safety and how you're managing that in your own business today. This is meant to be definitely an interactive session. And we want to hear from you and be able to help you with actual challenges you're facing in your business. Awesome. Are you getting some questions dropped in? Amazing. Hi, Sylvia, Brenda, Angela. Hi, Peggy. And this is a great question. Will you receive a certificate for continuing education credits after the webinar? You will. So stay tuned for that. You will receive an email from us here at LineLeader after today's session with a certificate for continuing education, as well as with some more information and a recording of today's webinar. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Great. We'll get started here in just about 4 minutes or so. Feel free to keep dropping in any questions you have. Meanwhile, is anyone else experiencing a cold front? It has been, I'm based in Texas, and we got quite the cold front this week, which personally I'm loving, but it isn't maybe great for allergies and temperature changes. But it is a nice change of pace to some of the 90 and 100-degree weather that we often experience. Oh my gosh, 49 degrees. Oh, in Virginia Beach, sure, yeah. Wow. We're in the 50s still. Haven't quite got down to the 40s, so I haven't needed to bust out any big coats or anything like that, but it is chilly for sure. All right, I see some more questions rolling in about compliance. That's amazing. We will make sure to get those answered before the end of today's session. And again, we will have a recording. So if you do need to drop off at any point, we will make sure to send it out to you after the session. Okay. Just about 2 minutes and then we will get started. Can't believe it's almost November. I don't know if anyone else is like just having a whirlwind year. Oh, Destiny said you can't hear me. Let's see. Does anyone else have any issues hearing us today? Free to let me know in the chat. Okay, or others are okay. All right. Okay, good morning, Brett.
Peace. All right.
Yes, we are just waiting for Cindy to hop on
Okay.
from One Place Childcare, but we are sharing where we're tuning in from this morning and kind of what the weather's like. So how is it up north for you?
It's cold. It's cold. I don't know if anybody's in the Midwest, but it's a little too early for how cold it is, in my opinion. But
It is chilly. Yeah, we're experiencing cold front down all the way down here in Texas. And I was just saying that it's not quite cold enough for me to bring out like my fun jackets for fall, but it is just cold enough to give us a reprieve from the 90-degree weather we're used to.
we had a little ice storm. It was 35 degrees 2 mornings ago. So yeah, it's hope we're ready. Hope we're ready.
Oh my gosh. Please. Okay.
We're waiting for Cindy still.
Waiting for Cindy. Yep. I think that I may have just sending her a quick email to hop on, make sure she has the right link.
Appreciate everybody joining this morning. Excited to share some good content, hopefully give you some good nuggets to take home with you and maybe implement in your business, the Child Care Center. But excited to have the conversation about compliance and risk management. Not always, not can be perceived as not an exciting topic, but really, really critical for running your business and your child care center and making sure you have some frameworks in place. Hopefully we can help you understand how to put that in place today. So excited to talk through it and share a little bit about how technology can enable you to execute on some of the risk management strategies, but all in all, more around framework and guidance on what that looks like. So excited and thanks for joining.
Yeah, amazing. Yep, so your audio and video are turned off for today's webinar so that you have an optimal viewing experience. But like I mentioned earlier, we definitely want to hear from you. So please feel free to drop any questions, any comments in the chat or in the Q&A. You will receive a certificate for continuing education at the end of today's webinar. It'll be sent to your email inbox from LineLeader, so keep an eye out for that. You will also receive a copy of the recording as well. And again, if you have any questions at all, we will make sure we get to those by the end of today's session. So please feel free to drop those in. Brett, if you want, I think Cindy's right about to hop on. You can go ahead and share your screen. Make sure we have all that set up correctly.
Sure, everybody can see that. Okay.
Fantastic. Yep. So today we're going to be talking about elevating your operational systems, compliance, and child safety for multi-sites. This can also apply to those of you who may have one site today. But as we know that these challenges do kind of get a little bit more challenging as you continue to grow and scale your business and add additional locations and have more staff and more families to keep an eye on. So that's kind of the reason that we've decided to focus on this topic. And in terms of who we've got or exactly what we'll be covering, as Brett mentioned, is risk management for early childhood education. Kind of a scary term for sure. Definitely not something that maybe we all think about on a day-to-day basis. So we're gonna be talking about what that is, why it matters for your business, and then how to get started for those who may not have a risk management strategy in place today. And then we're going to be talking about the execution side of it. So how do you identify that risk? How do you evaluate risk in your business? And then how do you actually mitigate that risk to keep it from having a long lasting negative impact on your business? And then how do you communicate those safety protocols once you've put them in place to your enrolled families as well as your prospective families, and wearing compliance as a badge of honor? And got joining us today, Brett Neller, who's the CEO of LineLeader. He can do a much better job explaining his background, but at a high level, he's got almost 20 years of experience overseeing finance and risk mitigation at large enterprise level organizations. And I know he's going to touch on that a little bit in a few slides. He's also been with LineLeader for over 6 years now. And then Cindy's the VP of operations at One Place Childcare. Really happy to have her. And she's got over 30 years in early childhood education and 14 plus years in early education technology. So I'll let you both kind of intro yourselves and give the floor to you now.
Yeah, go ahead, Cindy. You can kick us off with the intro if you're ready.
I am. Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Morgan. I've been with early care and education now for longer than I can recall, it feels like, but happy to spend the last 15 years helping early education programs leverage technology and do just a wonderful job educating our 0 to 5.
Awesome. And Brett Miller, CEO of LineLeader. Been with the company 6 years. Before that, I'll talk a little bit through the presentation, some of my experience elsewhere, but I love the space. I'm a father. I have a 4.5 and a 2.5-year-old. My wife and I send our kids to childcare every day. We entrust their safety with you all on the phone. And I always say that childcare operators are just as important to the fabric of the communities they serve as the police force and firefighters. Thank you for everything you do. It's awesome. And hopefully we can help you out today understand some frameworks for managing risk at your center operations, and talk a little bit about how technology can enable you to do that in the right way and efficiently and consistently. So excited to talk through a lot of that today. Again, not necessarily a super fun and exciting topic, but really critical, super important to think through those items. So we'll dive right in. Please pop your questions in the chat, and we'll try to address them as they come through. But today it's a lot of it's around building a culture of accountability. We talk about that a lot about LineLeader. Every business talks, cannot run a business without having some sort of a accountability measurements in it. A big part of that is compliance and risk management. When we talk about risk management, and it can be at any business, right? It doesn't have to be childcare. It can be oil and gas or hospitality or restaurants. It's the idea of how do you prevent unwanted things from happening, right? And it's not always fun to talk about, right? A lot of I love it actually. We talk a lot about it internally. Is if something happens, then you're going to have an undesirable result. So if you don't water your plants, they will die, right? So the thought is, how do you go and mitigate that if you don't water the plants by putting processes and procedures, SOPs, KPIs, or technology to help you run to keep those plants watered? That's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So if something happens, then an unwanted event happens. Super important, right? You're protecting the most valuable assets of people out there, their kids. So it's really good we talk about it at LineLeader. How do you look around the corner, not just to the corner? Looking to the corner is very short-sighted. Looking around the corner on if any unspecified events would happen, how could that negatively impact your center, and how do you get ahead of it, right? That's That's the end of the day you want to do with risk management. So you want to uncover and think through all the crazy things, because how many times you say crazier things have happened? They generally do happen. And if you can plan ahead, you don't have to be reactive. You can know exactly what you're going to do in a certain situation. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today as far as risk management. So if something happens and an unwanted event happens, how do you mitigate or control that if part of that statement? And Cindy will dive in a little bit later here in a couple of slides. But, you know, I think it's pretty self-explanatory what it is and why it matters. You know, you all as operators face tons of challenges. Like I walk in and drop my kids off in the morning and I'm like, holy cow, you all are amazing. The patience you have, you're having to balance, you know, the ratios. You have, you know, the cook bringing in breakfast and staff managing check in and check out. It's wild. You all are amazing. And then you got to deal with licensing. You got local state regulations. You have food compliance. You have safety compliance. Who knows when the licensing is going to stop by and pop us one of those surprise visits on y'all. So there's many aspects to risk as it relates to childcare operations, financial, legal, profitability, safety, compliance. So we're going to talk a little bit about today about how you can, you know, maintain your compliance in your center operations and ensure that children are ultimately safe. Because as a parent, that's the number one goal, right? Is making sure your children are safe and you're providing high quality care and helping to develop them and reach their development milestones. So Small Plays actually did a survey in 2024, and 66% of the surveys said organizational buy-in on compliance and risk management is highly important. You know, buy-in's tough, right? And it starts, there's this aspect of this culture, we talk about culture, building a culture of accountability around compliance and risk management. And it starts at the top. That's no secret there. So a company that has that compliance and safety and risk management ingrained in their company culture, and it's part of their North Star, it's part of their values, then it's very easy for that to cascade down to the team, and then for the team to set individual goals for the KPIs for the individual. If compliance and risk management are not part of the company culture, then it's really hard to get the team and individual to buy in. So if you're thinking as running a company or an organization, or even just running a center, is it part of what you talk about day to day with your team? Is it part of your mission? Is it part of your values? Is it part of your North Star? Because if it's not, it's really, really hard at the individual contributor level for them to buy in. So I would just challenge everybody there to think about at a company level what's really, really important. And if risk and culture and culture of compliance are not part of it today, I would consider thinking about how you make that part of the company culture, because without it, you can't expect an individual to buy into making sure you're in compliance with state regulations, or you're mitigating some of these risks that you're going to think about later today. So I've had the opportunity to be with 3 really great companies in my career, 4 now with LineLeader, but Chevron, Ritz-Carlton, and Deloitte. All of them do a really good job at the company level, emphasizing, whether it's safety or whatever their North Star is, so that it can cascade down to the individual. Chevron's a great example. I worked with Chevron during the Deepwater Horizon disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. Life on working in the oil and gas business is a very risky business. Their KPIs are around injuries and fatalities. That's just the nature of the business, and they want those to be at 0 at all times. They do an awesome job at a company level, making safety and compliance like a focal point. I didn't work on the rig, I worked in the corporate center, but it doesn't matter if you're working on the oil rig or you're the corporate center, safety is just everywhere. You can't walk around the office with hot coffee without a lid on it, or you'll get in trouble, right? Because it's just the principle of safety. When I was working for Chevron in Houston, Texas, if you go down to Houston in the middle of the day during the workday, there's no cars. Like everybody buses in from the suburbs, whether it's the Woodlands or Katy. But at lunchtime, if you look down from a building and you see all the people out for lunch, there's no cars around. You see a lot of people jaywalking. You see a lot of people just running across the street. But not Chevron employees, right? Chevron employees, because compliance and safety are such a big part of their culture, wait for the crosswalk to signal them to walk. Even if there's no cars, there's no perceived danger anywhere in downtown Houston, but the Chevron employees don't walk until the crosswalk says it's okay to walk. Everybody else is jaywalking. So if you're in Houston and you look down, you could tell who the Chevron employees are, because the safety culture and compliance culture is ingrained in their values. It's in their North Star. It's part of onboarding. It's part of the handbook. It's part of their values. So at the individual level, even if it seems so minor as like not putting a lid on your coffee or jaywalking when there's literally no cars anywhere to be seen, Chevron does a great job at making sure it's really part of the culture. So that's what I would say is like if you were in a city and there was a childcare conference and you were in your hotel and you were looking down, would you be able to spot your organization? Like culture, you should be able to spot who your crew is, because either they're following or not following protocol, or they're breaking rules, or you can just tell physically, like, because the culture is ingrained in them, who the Chevron employees are. So that's what I loved about Chevron. It was a little bit painful at times. Sometimes I wanted to cross the street. It was crazy. There's literally no cars, but you couldn't cross the street. But it was such an important part, and that's where it starts at the top. So, do you have that ingredient? Do you do emergency drills? Are you conducting frequent emergency drills that go beyond the mandated schedules and involve, not only staff and children, but also the parents in planning and preparation? Another example is like CPR first aid certification, providing all staff, not just required personnel, that type of training. So it starts with you as a leader in your organization so that it kind of permeates through the rest of the company. At LineLeader, we have established what we call a risk management framework, continuous risk management. And this is my favorite part of our organization. We have established what we call a risk review board. And every month we get together and talk about all the bad things that could happen, right? And it seems a little bit ominous, but it helps us, like I said, look around the corner and plan for the unknown. We get ahead of things that we wouldn't have normally got ahead of if we didn't lock ourselves in the room for an hour and talk through the glass half empty type of items. And we do that using this framework here. So what we do first is we go through and we look at all the different parts of our operation, whether it's employee related, financial related, technology related, customer related, and we identify all the risks we can think of. If this happens, then this bad thing was happen. And we document it in what we call a risk register. So we identify the risk, we define and submit it to a risk register, we document every part of that risk. We then sit there and analyze the risk. We evaluate like the severity, the probability of it happening and the severity of it happening. If it's a high probability and high severity, we're going to prioritize that risk, right? And talk about it a little bit deeper. And then we talk about how we mitigate those things. How do we stop that if we don't water the plants from happening? So we put together strategies around it. We have owners that are accountable for the mitigation strategies. We all bless and validate the plan to make sure we are all in alignment that that mitigation plan is going to be effective in eliminating that risk from our organization. And then we put responses into it. So like we report progress and outcomes every month on how we're tracking to that risk mitigation strategy. And then we're continuously monitoring and controlling it to understand how we're, is it still a high probability? Is it a lower probability? Can we deprioritize? Do we need to modify, what metrics are we doing to evaluate whether or not we're mitigating that plan? And it's really effective. It's not always fun to sit in a meeting and talk about all the if things that could happen, but what we found internally as part of our culture today, that we have become less reactive, right? We're looking around the corner, not just to the corner. And we have a better understanding of our overall business and how things fit together. There's nothing worse in the world than something bad happening, and not knowing what to do, not knowing how to act, and being reactive and trying to figure it out on the spot. So for us internally, and I would highly recommend adopting some sort of risk management framework, and it doesn't have to be super robust. It could be just talking through it with your peers or your other leaders in the building. But establishing some sort of risk management protocol, we have found very valuable internally. And it is okay to talk about all the bad things that can happen, because at the end of the day, you want to be prepared. You want the team to be able to be nimble and react, and not freeze in a time of a risky situation. You want to have already talked through what you would do. You want to think through like what protocols you haven't put in place yet that you need to put in place in case things happen. And we have found it really, really valuable. So we have risk officers in our company, which is a fun way to do it. We have a risk charter, we have a chairperson, and we use the risk management framework to help guide us on like the strategic direction of how we're going to kind of grow the company, right? And do right by our customers. So happy to talk a little bit more on that in more detail at some point, but it's been really successful for us. It's a best practice. If you're not talking about the risks, you should. It's okay. And this is a really great way to get proactive and get your team comfortable with the unknown, right? And that's where we found the benefit in it. So having a strategy in place and getting your teams rally around a new culture of accountability and compliance is like a long journey. It's not something that happens overnight. But you have to make it part of your team's day-to-day. It's got to be part of your North Star. It's got to be part of the company level to cascade down to the team and individual. It's okay to talk about the bad things. You need some sort of framework and mechanism for collecting those risks and understanding how to get ahead of them. Tracking reporting is often where leaders get lost. They can define the strategy, they can set the goals for their team to share their ideas, but they don't have a good way to monitor their team's performance or report on what they're doing wrong or right. It can tend to negatively impact retention, right? Because you have high performers that are doing everything that they have been asked to do, and then you have other people that are not. It's hard to recognize those that are following the protocol without some sort of tracking mechanism, and it leads to poor performers sticking around and the good ones leaving because the mistakes or the accountability around those that are poor performing don't get addressed, right? So without a strategy, execution is aimless. Without execution, strategy is useless. We have an operating calendar internally that we look at where we do strategic planning, we communicate, we do goal cascading, we do tracking and reporting, and we do regular performance. We have a performance management process, and we reward those that do a great job. We hold everybody accountable internally. But that's from any company, right? It doesn't matter if you're in childcare, if you're in technology. These are really, really important things to follow. And it's a good segue into handing off to Cindy on audit response and audit readiness and how do you identify risk. So I'm going to transition over to Cindy and she'll take it from there.
All right. Well, thank you, Brett. That was really great information. And I love how you really kind of shared personal anecdotes from companies that you've worked in where, like you said, I mean, how do you ingrain this into your company culture? I think it goes far beyond training. So let's talk a little bit about how you might identify risks. And at the end of this, I have some free resources I'll be happy to share with anyone that's on this call. I've got a very basic framework for risk management, a good place to start. I won't say it's robust, but it's a great way to sort of dip your toe into this and start working forward. So going from audit response to audit readiness means first you have to know, where am I today? How are we doing in this area of risk for our business? And so one of the great ways that One Place promotes being audit ready is to do your own self audits. And you can use this licensing framework that's available on your state website. If you don't know where it is or you can't locate it, email me. I've got copies of all the state licensing evaluation forms, and you can conduct your own self audit. And I highly recommend, a lot of people are already kind of doing this, but I say take it far beyond where you are today. Don't just have the center director or the owner doing this, but pull in your facilities team, pull in folks from maybe the kitchen. You get a different lens, a different perspective if you rope in talent that's already there on your team. Believe me when I say they are boots on the ground. They are noticing things within your facility that you might overlook because you're busy thinking about the financial end of the business or you're thinking about marketing. There's so many things that go on every single day in early care and education. It's hard to notice every little detail of your business, but your team is noticing these things and they are aware of them. So leverage that team genius is what I call it. I say there are always folks, you know, we're all fully aware of sort of that DISC profile. We've got these different personality traits that come into play in our work. And so if you have someone on your team that tends to identify the typos on any document, that's a person who's analytical, who's critically thinking, who's noticing these small details. She might be a great person to head up your newly formed risk management board. And maybe you come up with a fun name for it. You don't have to make this a drag. You can make it fun as you go about actually auditing your own business. So start with doing that first benchmarking process, see where you are today so that you know where you need to go tomorrow in order to mitigate risk. Next, after you've gotten that kind of that glass half full list of items, maybe you've gone through that self-auditing process and now you've got a number of areas that you know you're not meeting those compliance measures or those quality measures or even your own brand standards in every occasion. Once you've got that sort of written down, one big long list of all the, oh my gosh, this could happen. Oh my gosh, that could happen. What if Susie leaves our 2-year-old classroom? What happens if a child slips on that playground and really gets hurt? How do we respond? Are our processes in place to make sure that every team member knows what to do in the event of an emergency? You don't want to wait until that thing happens to role play it out. No, you've got to be role playing it now with your team so they know on every given occasion, they can be confident that they're going to take the right action at the right time and prioritize the right steps in the right order. And so I like to call this not just compliance training, but kind of if you want to get to the place where you're like Chevron, you can look down from the top of a building and spot your team of a culture of compliance excellence, then you've got to condition in that learning. Not everyone is going to immediately understand the rules of the road and understand the depth of licensing regulations. Heck, it takes almost anyone a few times reading it just to get through the legalese and know what they're actually asking you to do. But we all know that licensing standards are the very foundation of when you started your business and you were fully in compliance then. But as we grow and scale and bring on new team members, we can oftentimes, if we're not measuring these things critically and analyzing them regularly, then we can often start to lose that. We get off track, off kilter. The only way to bring that back is to not only start the compliance training during onboarding, as Brett said, and start conditioning it in, but conditioning it in at every touch point within your business on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. Wow, Cindy, that sounds like a lot. How am I going to do all of that? Well, it doesn't have to be that big. Don't let it get too big in your mind. Start small. Start with little things that you can do today. Like maybe you start with previous licensing evaluation reports that you've received from licensing, and you just kind of make a list of past violations that kind of caught you off guard, things that you thought you were on top of that maybe you need to discuss with the team and help them understand, connecting the why are these things important and how do I ensure that I am in compliance daily in my role within the organization. Connect it always back to the why and the core values and vision of your business. Remember, it's just like what Brett said too. As leaders, we set the tone in our business. So as I talk to childcare entities out there across the United States, one of the things we talk about often is raise your own personal standard and the standards of your team will follow suit. When you start raising your standards for what's acceptable in your business, you'll be surprised how your team starts puffing up their chest, holding their shoulders back, and rising up to that occasion. So don't be afraid to raise your standards and perform those measurements on a regular basis, calling out what they're doing well always. Of course, we want to be finding those things on a regular basis, but also pointing out when they're not quite meeting the expectation level. Everyone wants to feel like they're making progress. Everyone wants to feel like they're doing a great job in their role. So give them visual, tangible examples of what your expectations are. It makes it much easier for them to meet those. And then if you're using technology to do some of this, you can actually build in personalized coaching messages around the points that you think your team are not quite excelling in right now. You can build in links to the regulation, build in help articles, and coach your team toward excellence. Requiring photographic evidence. Remember, if you can't prove it was done, then really it wasn't done as far as someone who's coming in and examining your business. So you've got to have documentation and physical evidence around all of these things at all times. Automate feedback loops. So we all know that we're getting surveyed all the time. Doesn't matter if you're getting a cup of coffee, staying at a hotel like I am right now, or even on things like this webinars, we're always asking for that feedback. How was it? Was it valuable to you? How could it have been better? Well, ask your team for feedback on any of these processes as you implement them. So if you're going to start, like Brett suggested, having a risk mitigation board, come up with a catchy name for that leader, come up with a catchy name for the board meetings on a monthly basis, and then get all of the team together and offer feedback loops. How are these new processes fitting into your daily role? How are they working for you? How might they be improved? What are you starting to notice within our business? And then another thing you can do is make sure that your parents know about your safety protocols and all of the things that you're doing in order to ensure a healthful, safe environment for their children while they're learning. Use it as ways to market your business. You want to call attention to those extra above and beyond steps that you're taking and say, look at what we're doing to ensure that your children are having the best possible safe, guarded experience while they're in care and learning. So ask for those things and then create nice safety rewards. I mean, there's a lot of ideas out there. In fact, I was recently at a conference and I heard a woman say, and I won't speak her name because I didn't get permission. I wish I would have, but she told this story about an incentive that she does with her team. And all she did was she bought a massage chair of all things. You know, I just was at the Texas County Fair, and I sat in one for quite a while. But you can buy these things on Amazon, write them off as a business expense. And what she does is she actually gives her team 15-minute time slots in the massage chair as a reward. Hey, Brett, how would you feel about sitting in a massage chair for 15 minutes during a break while you're working hard on LineLeader?
I would not complain. I would not complain.
I tend to agree with you. I would not complain either. So these are small ways that we can actually incentivize our team to keep an eye on compliance, keep an eye on the risks that could pop up at any time. Let's move on and talk a little bit about how do we look at evaluating those risks. Now we've got a list. We've started to prioritize them. We've used Brett's suggestions. We've formed a board. They're meeting. They're talking about all the possible things that could go wrong, right? Doesn't sound like much fun. You know, it's like all the things that are bad that might happen in your business. And you've got this long, long list. Now you start actually evaluating them, as he said. How urgent are they? How immediate are they? How likely are they to happen on a regular basis? And what is the impact to your business? Is the impact directly to a child? Is that child unsafe in some regard? Well, then we've got to talk about that. We've got to prioritize that and put it at the top of the list. But by sitting down and collectively having those conversations, it's another way you're conditioning in that compliance mindset on a regular and ongoing basis. Trend analysis. If your team is like most multi-site organizations here in America, you've got managers going out and doing on-site visits to measure a lot of these things and have these types of conversations. Unfortunately, most of them are doing it on paper, which is fine. If that's a starting place for you, there's nothing wrong with that. What we're encouraging you to do, though, is to look at technology tools that can help you automate the analysis and see the trends where they might pop up. You might be surprised by how well you're doing in a lot of these areas and find that there's only some small areas that really need some strategic improvement. So it's a great way to start being more effective, more efficient as you grow and scale. If you're depending upon a human resource to go out, physically travel to site locations and manually record these things and give coaching and meet with your team, that's perfectly fine. But then do they have the time and bandwidth and the skill? Let's remember, not everyone is an analyst. I'm not an analyst. I had to be taught how to analyze data, and that's a skill, and it can be taught, it can be learned. But have they got the time to lay out a variety of these forms and reports over a period of time and really look at them and analyze them? Well, Cindy, we're putting them into an Excel spreadsheet. Great. That's a step in the right direction because you can start to then analyze that data, look for where those little holes are, those little hot spots that can turn into much bigger risks if you're not having that conversation. It's all about spotting the patterns within your business that might lead you to things like classrooms being shut down or licensing violations, as we all know, are posted online. If we believe that parents are not Google searching and finding the licensing violations and then thinking in their minds that location is unsafe, well, then we're fooling ourselves. We truly, truly are. Because parents won't know what's a minor violation and what's a serious violation. They'll just see violation or citation and say, that's not safe for my child. So it's really important for you to focus on these things because, as we all know, the business of early care and education has changed significantly, at least over the last 30 years since I've been here. And it's only going to speed up, increase as we start to see, you know, our public education system dipping their toe into early care and education. So we've got to start looking at these things and learning from leaders like Brett with deeper experience in risk and risk management. All right, moving right along, more on this. I just spoke with 2 licensing analysts, and both of them said to me, I can push a button and see what types of violations have happened in any location across a period of time. Well, if you can't do the same, then you're likely putting a lot of effort and a lot of human resources, which we all know our staff salaries tend to be a big part of our budget, right? So anytime you can think about your business and think about something that happens over and over and over again, it has to be done regularly, then that's a spot you should think about automating, because technology can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year without ever getting tired. Humans get tired. Humans need breaks. Humans need to feel like they're making an impact, and they need variety in order to feel good in their role within their company. So I encourage you to look for those automation tools that can help you take those rote exercises off of them and deliver dashboards of information to you so that you're making better data-driven decisions and not simply reacting to what's happening in that specific moment. Okay, execution, just as Brett said, we had a lot of the same thoughts. You can never completely eliminate all risk to your business. So let me say that again. No business ever completely gets rid of all risk. The best you can possibly do is spend time on it so that you've done what Brett just suggested. You are already prepared for the if, what then? And, you know, an old mentor of mine told me that the best way to make decisions is to get as many options on the table as possible. If you only have 2 options which way to go, forward or backward, yes or no, then it's not time to make a decision. You've got to have some alternatives on the table. So when I think about risk, and we've got that big list, we've prioritized it all, you also want to talk about what are the options for dealing with this? Is it something we can deal with? Is it something that we should be trying to simply avoid? So we're going to change our daily schedule in order to avoid that risk. Is it something that we can reduce or eliminate altogether? Maybe making a shift in our daily schedule or in the way that we're doing things? Or is it something where we need to get outside help? Maybe transferring it over to someone that has experience and knowledge in that to help us mitigate that risk. These are options that you want to explore with your team as you're looking at risk mitigation, and then creating those action plans. The who's going to take responsibility if this happens? What do we do when that does happen? And when is it most likely to happen? What's the probability of it happening, and how often might it happen? And then creating those action plans so that everyone knows that if this situation occurs, here's how we handle it. And it can't just be your center owner or director or your leadership team. It's got to be drilled down into every member of your team. I think that Brett actually mentioned one I was going to mention. The actual standards in early care and education for CPR training is having a certain number of employees having that training. Go far and beyond the call of duty in that. Why? It shows up in licensing violations more often than you would suspect. And if every team member had CPR training, infant and toddler first aid, well, then it doesn't matter on any given day whether the right staff is there on site in the facility or not, because everyone has that equal training. That's a great first step. Look for other examples of that. If your team could be incentivized to gain further professional development, further additional credentials, whether they're in use or not, well, now you've got greater flexibility across your team. So think about cross-functional teams. Think about cross-functional training. Think about sharing what we know across the team. and then documenting those things so others can follow in those pathways to power. All right, moving right along before we run out of time, incident reporting. This is one of the things that both Brett and I are so excited about, is the integration points for LineLeader and OnePlace. We love being partnered together, and we're partnering on behalf of you to make incident reporting that much easier, simplified, and seamless. So information can come directly from your LineLeader account into your incident report seamlessly. So child data, parent data, allergy information, contact information, no need to fill any of that out. Simply integrate it from LineLeader into your OnePlace account, and then send that incident report seamlessly to your parents for digital signatures. Of course, staff can sign them digitally as well. One of the things that one of our users recently did was to include on every incident report their actual response protocols. And so this is another way that they're communicating out and bringing their parents into how they have this culture of compliance and safety on behalf of their children. So at the bottom of every incident report is this nice message around, here are our protocols if something does happen to your child. Talk about inspiring confidence. If I got a report like that and my child had just simply had a little bruise or bump, I would certainly feel better. I'd feel more confident that my child was there in the right school at the right place. And I would go back to thinking more about my own job at that moment, knowing that they're well cared for. And then incident trends and analysis. When we talk about incidents, this can also be staff incidents. There are things that happen with staff. These can be behavioral incidents that you might want to be tracking in order to have better, robust conversations with parents. So don't think just, oh my gosh, this is when a child gets hurt. This can be around behavior. This can be around actions, attitudes, almost anything. It's instances of behavior for staff and or children. And then you can analyze that. So I always like to think about back in the day when I owned my center, flu season was a really challenging time for me because I always had to have extra staff on hand because I knew that I would lose some staff to flu. And so if I had had technology back then, I definitely would have been tracking which classrooms had incidents of flu, what time period did it happen in. It wouldn't have caught me so off guard the first few years when I didn't realize that where I lived, flu season happens at a particular time of the year. In Texas, where I live now, it happens at a completely different time of the year. And so having this ability to look at when are the seasons of flu, when are the seasons that we tend to see children with RSV or children coming down with the latest, instance of chickenpox or whatever other thing is going around at this age. I've got grandchildren now, so I was hard pressed there for a second to think about what are the childhood diseases that might pop up. But if you can see them and you start to notice trends in certain classrooms, well, then you can make additional protocols to help offset that. Maybe it's you invest in some new sanitation strategies or tools. Maybe it's putting in extra fun soaps that encourage greater numbers of hand washing at the time. There's lots of ways to do it, but having that data really tells you when you need to lean in and pay attention. And then let's move on to the next slide there. I think I have one more. Nope, that's you.
That's it. Yeah,
I'm going to hand it off to you, Brett.
No, thanks. And Sierra and I will kind of walk through these. I'm a parent of 2 little ones. I think flu season is all year round. It's got to be it's all year round. But like a big part of thanks, Cindy, is awesome. We're excited about the integration. A lot of good stuff there. Risk management, compliance management, super important. Another part of just safety and compliance, the aspect of communicating with families too, right? As a parent, like I always want to know what's going on in the center. If I see the fire engine out at the center, I'm like, was it a fire drill or was it a friendly visit from the fire department? And it's a good part of an important part of what you all do and the operations you run is communicating with families around safety. So, proactive and transparent communication strengthens the trust that we have as parents dropping our kids off every day. It curbs our anxiety. Like I know, like when I'm fine now, I got two of them, but when I'm dropping my first kid off, like the anxiety around dropping my child off at the center was enormous. Same with my wife, and we've been doing it for a long time now, so it's a little bit easier, less stressful. But like we still are constantly, if for whatever reason the daily report gets sent out at 3 and shows my child was checked out, and but both my wife and I are working at home, I'm calling the center right away because they didn't communicate that, hey, oh, that was a mistake, your child's still here, nobody checked them out. That happens. And so super important. It curbs anxiety, reinforces your center's reputation as being safe, compliant childcare provider. So wearing that safety and compliance as a badge of honor at your business is a good thing. It's a positive thing, right? Sharing protocols around cleaning, health, allergen management, emergency drills, all that stuff. Anything you can do to communicate what you're being proactive around safety and compliance to families. As a parent, I that is really, really important. It gives me peace of mind to do that, and you have to have some sort of engagement technology platform in order to do that. I don't know, Sierra, anything else on that
Yeah, well, I mean, I love the term where safety and compliance is a badge of honor at your business. And I do have to give credit where credit's due. I definitely stole that term badge of honor from Lynn Winger with Compliance Alliance, because compliance really shouldn't be a bad word, but sometimes it can be a scary term. And so, making sure that you're showing off all the hard work that you're doing to ensure child safety, be compliant with national, state, local regulations is imperative to your business. And as a marketing person myself, I'm head of marketing here at LineLeader, so I could talk about communicating with your new incoming leads and your existing customers all day long. And so on the next slide, I just wanted to give some tips as to how you can communicate compliance and safety with your enrolled families in some things that you already have in place. So your family handbook, I hope everyone has one. This is where you should, include all your health and safety policies, and provide it during the enrollment process, really. And this kind of gives families that comprehensive reference they can revisit long after their first start date. Parent-teacher conferences, also a great time to bring up health and safety topics with those individual one-on-one meetings with families, and also offer some more personalized insights into how their specific child is protected at the center, and being a little bit more specific about their age group and their classroom, and diving into things that their teacher is doing to keep them safe. Signage, I know everyone has tons of signs and flyers, and there's probably like a cork board in the center with all kinds of stuff all over it. But this is a great place to identify any kind of key health and safety updates, like Cindy and Brett have mentioned, if there is maybe an outbreak at the school or something going on that parents should be in the know about. I mean, they're doing pickup and drop off coming into the center usually twice a day. So keep that kind of at the forefront for them. And then mobile parent engagement app. So we talked a little bit about technology and how that can be a great way to communicate with your families. I think a lot of folks are probably using a mobile parent communication app of some sort at this time. But this is a great place to remind parents when there is a fire drill, so they're not seeing a fire truck come by and wondering, like, did something happen or did I miss something? What's going on over there? If it's just a stop and a visit from the local fire department. So communicating with your enrolled families, keeping them in the know is really key. You want to build that know, trust factor with your families. It's kind of a marketing term, but especially with new incoming families, prospective families, building the know, trust factor before they ever step foot in the center is imperative to winning that business. So
it's a different, I'll say too, like with enrollment is down across the country right now, right? We have a lot of stats on that. Anything you can do during that tour, or you can highlight that safety and compliance as a parent, that's like the number one thing, right? You want to make sure that you're curbing the anxiety of the family dropping them off. If you have a culture of safety and compliance and it's visible anywhere, whether it's through newsletters or the family orientation or, website about us page, those items are differentiators in getting a family to sign up and stay with you, right? And retaining that family. So it's hugely important. It's undervalued. The more you can hype it and the more you can present yourself as an organization that has that type of culture, is really going to improve and drive your business overall.
Absolutely. And beyond having that kind of written communication as well for prospective families, you're getting, depending on how long your tour might be, 30, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour, face to face with families before they decide to register with your center. So make sure that your directors or your enrollment specialists, whoever might be giving the tour at your centers, make sure that they're equipped to talk about your compliance and safety protocols. Something that we recommend for our customers is to have tour talking points. And you can actually customize those based on age group, based on the area of the facility that they may be conducting the tour. And that way, everyone is kind of speaking the same language, using the same messaging, talking about things in the same way to deliver that consistent experience for families and make sure that every family that walks through the door knows about what you're doing to ensure child safety and mitigate risk in your business as well.
Script the talking points. Don't be worried about scripting the talking points. If you want a center director executing on a tour or some of your staff executing on a tour and you want to make sure they highlight some of the safety and compliance, script the talking points so that when they're going through and they're looking at the tour sheet, they know exactly in their own words, not like a robot, but knowing what to hit on as you walk through the center. Because as a parent, again, anything from food safety to classroom safety, playground safety, door lock, entrance security, like video cameras, whatever you have, those are really, really key differentiators for parents. And if you're not highlighting those during a tour, you're missing an opportunity to convert them to be a family in your center for as long as they can be with their kids.
Amazing. Well, this has been a really great session today. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for Q&A. So please feel free to drop any questions you may have in the chat. Brett, Cindy, if there's anything you feel like you didn't get to tackle while you were presenting, I definitely want you to get the chance to share that. And we did.
I'll just say
ahead.
one quick thing, Sierra. Anyone that wants to get started and doesn't have a framework, feel free to email me. I'll send you a basic package that'll help you to start with this kind of risk evaluation inside of your own organization. And we also offer a free evaluation of the cost of your top licensing violations. You might just be surprised by that. So Cindy at oneplaceonline.com. I'll be happy to help.
Amazing.
Anything that you would be interested in double clicking on that we didn't go deep on, whether it's business planning, operational, the ops model, goals and objectives cascading, we're happy to do more webinars on that to provide some additional information. How do you build a culture of accountability? We really just skim the surface on that. And yeah, so there's a lot we can go on. We want to give you content that you find valuable in these engagements. So if there's anything in here that you are like, man, that'd be interesting to learn more about, let us know. We'll put on another webinar. We're happy to do it. I love sharing, what we do here at LineLeader. I love learning more about what you all do in the center operations. But again, really just thank you for all that you do and being awesome people and being in an industry that we all need as families, working families. So thank you for taking care of our kids. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did get a question of, will the PowerPoint be available? Yes, you will receive the PowerPoint. You'll receive a copy of the recording from today, as well as our certificate for continuing education. And just as One Place did a compliance survey earlier this year, I would also encourage you all to visit our website, lineleader.com, and complete our survey. It'll take maybe 10 minutes. And those insights go into our 11th annual childcare benchmarking report that comes out in January. And there's questions in there where you can share some of the biggest challenges you're facing in your business and talk a little bit more about some of the compliance or child safety challenges that you're facing. And it's all anonymous, and you will be entered to win a $250 Amazon gift card. But those insights really help others in the industry. We're up to, I think, 3,000 survey respondents right now and aiming for 5,000. We want to get as many early childhood education voices recorded as we possibly can. So I'll share out the link to that after this as well. But amazing. Thank you so much, Brett and Cindy. Really appreciate it. And everyone keep an eye on your email inbox for all those goodies.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of the week.
Great. Thanks. Bye.